More than 130 migrants feared drowned off the coast of Djibouti. Sudan orders mass release of protesters arrested during the ongoing protests. And the World Health Organization raises the red flag on rising cases of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Hello everyone, welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Also ahead on the program. In business news, Kenya Airways' airport takeover lands into trouble. And in your sport, Cote d'Ivoire agrees to host the 2023 edition of the Africa Cup of Nations. The United Nations Migration Agency says that at least 28 people are dead and over 100 missing off the coast of Djibouti. This is after two boats carrying migrants capsized off Godoria in Djibouti's Obok region. The boats were headed to Yemen. The incident occurred about 30 minutes after the overloaded boat set off in heavy seas. One survivor estimated there were about 130 people on his boat, but was not able to say the number of passengers on the other vessel. Djibouti has in recent years become a transit point for migrants heading to find work on the Arabian Peninsula. Last year, at least 30 migrants from Somalia and Ethiopia, believed to be headed for Djibouti, drowned when their boat capsized off the coast of Yemen. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte says 5 countries have offered to help end a standoff over a rescue boat docked off Sicily with 47 migrants on board. The migrants were rescued from a rubber boat off the Libyan coast more than a week ago. However, Italy has refused to allow them ashore to request asylum. The Netherlands also refused to take in the migrants, saying there is a need to distinguish between genuine refugees and economic migrants. Portable toilets have been shipped to the vessel as living conditions continue to deteriorate. French President Emmanuel Macron has called for the ship to dock in the nearest and safest harbor as quickly as possible and for the migrants to then be shared out. Conte says his government is ensuring all people on the boat are looked after.
At the moment, Germany, France, Portugal, Romania and Malta have offered to help. I have just been told that the court has not ordered the ship to be brought ashore, but it simply encourages Italy to continue what it's already doing, providing sanitary support if necessary, providing relief and continuing to assist the people on board.
And still on migration matters, changes in movement patterns and new restrictions are said to have converted Spain into the main route for migrants into Europe. Many of those arriving are victims of ethnic violence, trafficking, as well as those fleeing poverty from their home countries.
According to a new report by the United Nations Refugee Agency, Spain became the main route for migrants seeking entry into Europe in 2018.
As UNHCR team on the ground, we are seeing the arrival of people who have gone through desperate journeys in order to find a safe haven. Because we must not forget that these people are fleeing violence, war, conflict and persecution, and that nobody...
2 years, forced to flee violence and threats in his home country, he crossed from Mali to southern Spain at only 20 years of age. His journey took him across Niger, Algeria and Morocco.
If someone asked me to take that route, I would advise them not to do it, because it's not easy to make that journey. I saw so many things during that route. I've suffered a lot. My life was in danger.
Hamidou was eventually rescued by Spanish Coast Guards after 2 days at sea in a plastic Zodiac boat crammed with over 40 people. He's now living in a reception center in the coastal city of Malaga in southern Spain, patiently waiting to be granted asylum.
Thanks to God, I'm beginning a new life here.
However, without enough legal pathways to safety, many will continue to take dangerous journeys in search for a better life. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Authorities in Sudan have ordered the release of all detainees who have been arrested during weeks of anti-government protests in several cities. The head of Sudan's National Intelligence and Security Services said office while visiting a prison in the capital, Khartoum. Hundreds of protesters, activists and opposition figures have been detained since protests began to spread across Sudan in December. The demonstrations, triggered by a worsening economic crisis, turned into anger over the incumbent president's 30-year rule in the country. The World Health Organization has said that there has been an increase in reported cases of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of the Congo's North Kivu province in recent weeks. The world body noted that the Katwa health zone is where response teams have faced pockets of community mistrust. The UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said that the outbreak also extended southwards to the high security risk Kayina health zone. Dujarric said that the World Health Organization teams are actively working to build community trust and scale up the response in these areas.
Our colleagues at the World Health Organization report that in recent weeks there's been an increase in reported cases of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo's North Kivu province. Teams are actively working to build community trust and scale up response in these areas. As of the 24th of January, a total of 666 confirmed and 49 probable cases of Ebola were reported, including 443 deaths, and 248 people have now recovered from the disease.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Nigeria seeks $850 million to support those displaced by the Boko Haram insurgency. And UK legislators reach a non-binding agreement to avoid a no-deal Brexit.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. My home country lies at the foot of Africa, the southernmost tip of our beautiful continent, and the unique point at which two great oceans meet. Now on a clear day in Cape Town, you can just make out Robben Island, the place where Nelson Mandela was jailed for so long. South Africa has changed so much in the years since then, but it is this country's history that shaped me, took me into reporting. I'm inspired by Africa's men and women of courage. It's the everyday hero who brings out my passion. The creatives, the decision makers, the risk takers who are shaping a bright African future. I see them in Cape Town. I see them in the pulsating city of Johannesburg. I see them across the continent, and I know our time has come.
CGTN is a platform where African voices can speak for themselves and take their stories to the world. My name is Lindy Mtongana, and I'm a news anchor and reporter for CGTN.
The United Nations and its humanitarian partners in Nigeria are asking for $848 million to support internally displaced people in the country as well as refugees. The fundraising is expected to run for a year and should also benefit countries hosting refugees from Nigeria.
The response strategy by the UN and its partners is expected to run for 3 years. For 2019 alone, $848 million is required in funding.
This year, the aim is to provide aid to 6.2 million people in Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe states, with an appeal for $848 million.
8 groups in Nigeria aim to reach 6.2 million vulnerable people in the country. These include those who have been hit the hardest by a decade-long crisis between non-state armed groups and government forces in the northeast.
This conflict has imposed untold suffering on millions of people, including women and children. Within a climate of insecurity and complete impunity, human rights violations, including sexual and gender-based violence, are systematically committed, while communities are being destroyed, with a net negative impact on development.
According to the United Nations, millions remain internally displaced in Nigeria alone, and about 228,500 are refugees in neighboring countries.
Within the displacement figure, we talk about 2.5 million people who are displaced, who lost their homes, who are not able to get on with their lives. 1.9 million internally displaced within Nigeria in the northeast. About 500,000 internally displaced in Cameroon.
The conflict in northeast Nigeria has spilled over borders across the whole Lake Chad region. This has led to widespread displacement as well as violations of international humanitarian law. Bulletin, CGTN.
Let's cross over to CGTN's Phil Ihaza. He's in Abuja for us. Phil, what are the key issues to be addressed over the 3 years in this humanitarian program?
Thank you, Beatrice. Well, if you look at the fact that quite a number of people have been killed, displaced, and placed in humanitarian assistance as a result of a decade-long war against insurgency in the northeast. Now, the fact that United Nations are coming in to see how that they can assist with quite a number of other organizations, you know, they have also, in 2018, for example, close to more than $1 billion was required to assist, you know, people, millions of people. According to the latest findings, close to, as of 2018, it was about 8 million people displaced, affected by, or rather in need of humanitarian assistance. And in 2018 alone, with most of that fund, $1 billion raised by donor partners from several countries and partners, organizations, about 1 million of the 8 million were reached. And now we have 7.1 million in provide basic amenities like food, water, shelter, protection, you know, for these people. And in 2019, they are requesting for 250 million less than what was required in 2018. That's about $848 million to tackle these issues and see that, you know, at least 6.2 million can be reached. And that will go a long way to reduce the number of people in need of humanitarian assistance, especially in the affected areas.
Well, those affected areas specifically, because this strategic plan will support the government's effort in addressing the situation in the northeast of Nigeria. Exactly how is the situation there now, and what has been achieved so far?
Well, definitely the strategic plan will go a long way in assisting, you know, the government in reducing people in need of humanitarian assistance. Let's look at the fact that Nigeria is currently the world poverty capital, with millions of people living in extreme poverty, and majority of most of them are in those areas. We also have over 13 million out-of-school children. Part of them are also affected by this decade-long war of insurgency. But you see, at the moment, the humanitarian need is beyond the response activities from the government, understandably so, because of the fact that the government has been focused on, you know, decimating the terrorists in those areas. Now, the base states known as Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe states, to ensure that they don't control any states or swaths of territories or local government areas. And although the insurgents still go about attacking military formations and communities, but they have gone a long way in ensuring that, the war, against the insurgency can be over, so that we don't have this revolving effect of people still, going into being displaced or needing humanitarian assistance.
Well, Phil, aside from the strategic plan and the decimation of the insurgents in the northeast, though, what exactly has the government been doing to help the internally displaced people from this region? And are those plans now aligned to this new strategy?
Well, if you look at, you need to go back to the progress achieved by the United Nations and other, partners for 2018. Like I said earlier, close to 1 million people in need of humanitarian assistance were reached. So it also means that the enabling environment for them to carry out their activities were created by the government, although many of them were attacked by the insurgents. But then going forward, the reason that they are ensuring that they are on this plan and the fact that the government is assisting, we spoke to, the spokesperson of the defense military, Nigeria's defense military, Brigadier General John Agim, recently, who said that the government is doing its best possible to ensure that adequate security is provided for the aid workers so that they can carry out their activities and help the country, assist the millions of people in need of humanitarian assistance.
Right, Philly has it there for us in Abuja. Thank you. Now, South Sudan's government says it cannot repatriate internally displaced persons due to a lack of funds. The UN says 190,000 South Sudanese people are still sheltering under its protection across the country. CGTN's Patrick yet spoke to Hussein Mar Nyuothu, the humanitarian minister, for an update.
Peace deal was signed in 2018. But up to now, 190,000 South Sudanese are still in internally displaced persons camp. Does this say that these people are not confident enough about the implementation of the current peace deal?
Some people are kind of like, traumatized. That, the crisis of 2013 and then the crisis of 2016 and all this. Some are actually coming out with confidence that a lot of people have come out like wow, nearly 17,000 people came out, and the UN has testified this. In Juba, which is the main, protection site, a lot of people have come also that are inside here in Juba, and some have traveled to places like Unity State, Jungle State, and all this. But again, we are human beings. Some are saying they want to see, is this peace going to hold? And maybe they want to test with time. But there are also some practical issues that funding also is an issue. There are a lot of people now that have actually come out and they want to proceed to their original homes, which in their states. But again, our partners, we launched last year a response that is jointly the government and the UN agencies. We are doing it together. It's called Humanitarian Response Plan, which is actually the needs of the people, and especially now with the peace agreement, it will be a very huge operation that people need to go back home. And this one needs funding, like nearly $1.5 billion.
And then talking about the funding, yes, you correctly said $1.5 billion is needed. How far is the response of the donor community?
Well, the donor community are doing their best. But as all of us, we know there are a lot of competition over resources these days. There are a lot of crises, not only South Sudan. You see situation in Yemen, in Syria, in all over the world, many crises. And all these donors, everybody is going to them and they have to give. And indeed, there is a serious kind of competition. And there's eventually the crisis, they don't stop in the world. And we are afraid that there will be a donor fatigue that they will not be able to pay.
There were also small issues here and there about, for example, people occupying other people's houses, and also the issue of access to some places. Some NGOs have been complaining. How is the situation now?
The issue of people occupying other people's houses. Some people built in other people's plots. The president made a presidential order whereby asking the security forces that indeed they have to move together, okay, in coordination with us. A lot of people were evicted from the houses. Even some plots, people who have built illegally, their houses were demolished. And it did encourage a lot of people from the Unity side, and they came out, they got their houses are free. The issue of access, indeed, there has been problems. The problems, South Sudan is a huge country. There are areas where there is no anybody there. And these are roads that the convoy, the United Nations, the NGOs, they take their convoys going to the villages. Sometimes they pass through roadblocks. some of the roadblocks are actually created by unruly individuals within the security forces. And the president ordered, and these roadblocks were removed.
And we now head to South Africa, where preparations are already underway for the annual commemoration of the Armed Forces Day, which will take place in Cape Town next month. The event will be presided over by President Cyril Ramaphosa. It involves thousands of men and women from the South African Armed Forces participating in a host of combat drills as well as static displays. As CGTN's Travis Andrews tells us, the South African Navy will be coordinating all efforts in commemorating this historical event.
The SAS Amatola is the pride of South Africa's Navy, as well as the country's first frigate. And now this state-of-the-art warship will play a key part in the upcoming Armed Forces Day. The vessel will be one of 8 taking part in the annual event, which will include over 8,500 Defence Force members, as well as a host of naval, ground and air force assets. But Armed Forces Day is also being held as an annual commemoration to those members who have fallen in the line of duty.
This is part of us commemorating the sinking of SS Mendi in 1917, where almost 604 African members of the Native Corps perished in the English Channel.
President Cyril Ramaphosa will be officiating the ceremonies, and much of the Navy's assets will be taking part. The military procession is also set for a 21-gun salute. Naval warships will be docked in Cape Town's Victorian Alfred Waterfront Basin and will be open to the public so that they can engage with personnel who have fashioned out a career in the armed forces.
We use this as well to bring the armed forces to the people of South Africa. We do so by hosting Armed Forces Day in different provinces.
Fighter jets, helicopters and wreath laying will set the scene for a surreal experience in the mother city come February, and more is also in the pipeline. This event will also include a fan park in Cape Town's largest township, which is meant to reach out to grassroots communities.
There's a fan park which is created specifically for the youth, those from secondary schools that have an interest in moving on from secondary school into the national forces. And the South African Air Force will be displaying at the specific area.
Now the ships are being positioned and troops have been training in anticipation for what will no doubt be a military event of scale never before seen in the mother city, and one that the country can be proud of. Representative CGTN, Cape Town.
Let's go over to the United Kingdom, where a frenzied day of parliamentary votes on amendments to Theresa May's Brexit deal has yielded results. Members of Parliament reached a non-binding agreement to avoid a so-called no-deal Brexit, under which the UK would crash out of the EU unilaterally. But they also rejected a cross-party amendment to delay the Brexit deadline, which remains fixed at the fast-approaching date of March the 29th. Instead, the body approved a proposal from senior Conservative Member of Parliament Graham Brady, which calls for alternative arrangements to avoid border checks in Northern Ireland. It offers support for Theresa May's original deal if she can remove the Irish backstop arrangement. Now it's up to the Prime Minister to present Brussels with her latest bid to reopen talks. CGTN's Richard Bestick reports from London.
In the shadow of Parliament, all sides wait for word on government's Brexit plans. Inside, the Prime Minister insists members of Parliament must tell Brussels what it'll take to get agreement in the UK.
What it will take to move beyond the confusion and division and uncertainty that now hangs over us.
And what the Prime Minister said could take a fresh look is the Northern Ireland backstop, an insurance against a return to a hard border between the British-ruled North and the independent South. Unspecified alternative arrangements.
What I'm talking about is not a further exchange of letters, but a significant and legally binding change to the withdrawal agreement.
Therein lies a dilemma for May, because at an EU summit in Cyprus, reports suggested little appetite for reopening talks that took more than 2 years to agree, and particularly on the emotive issue of the British border in Ireland.
As the European Council has clearly indicated, this exit agreement, which was negotiated between the European Union and the UK, is the best deal possible, and it's not renegotiable.
On the streets outside Parliament, there was broad agreement.
I don't think the EU will really come up with anything that's any different to what we've got now.
Basically, they told us there's no more negotiations, that's it, door closed. They've already said that's not on, it's impossible, she's wasting her time.
Theresa May's Brexit battles are fast turning into a parliamentary war of attrition, as she promises to return time and again to this place and whittle down resistance. Of course, the entire campaign is now dependent on getting the European Union to reopen those Brexit withdrawal talks, and that's far from a done deal. Richard Bestick, CGTN, London.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Aviation, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
And here's a quick recap of your headlines this hour. The UN Migration Agency says 228 people are dead and over 100 are missing off the coast of Djibouti. This is after two boats carrying migrants capsized off Godoria in Djibouti's Obok region. The boats were heading to Yemen. The incident occurred about 30 minutes after the overloaded boat set off in heavy seas. One survivor estimated there were about 130 people on his boat, but was not able to say the number of passengers on the other vessel. Sudan's security chief has ordered the release of people detained during weeks of anti-government protests in the country. The Information Ministry made the announcements as demonstrations persist in several cities. Police used tear gas to disperse dozens of demonstrators in anti-government protests in Omdurman and Khartoum's Buri neighborhood on Tuesday. Hundreds of protesters, activists and opposition figures have been arrested since protests began to spread across Sudan on December the 19th. The World Health Organization says there has been an increase in reported cases of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo's North Kivu province. The world body notes response teams have faced pockets of community mistrust in Kantwa Health Zone. The UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric said that the outbreak also extended southwards to the high security risk Kayina Health Zone. And the United Nations and its humanitarian partners in Nigeria are asking for $848 million to support internally displaced people in the country. The fundraising is expected to run for a year and should also benefit countries hosting the refugees from Nigeria. And that's a look at your headlines. Let's now take a look at your business news. Here's what's ahead. Kenya Airways' airport takeover lands into some trouble at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And South Africa is expected to announce whether to split its troubled power utility next month.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest minds in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
You don't find stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Start off your business segment in Kenya. Aviation workers have issued a strike notice in opposition to Kenya Airways' planned takeover of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. According to the Kenya Aviation Workers Union, its members face redundancy should the takeover be approved. The looming industrial action is expected to commence from next week, Tuesday. Kenya Airways has proposed the formation of a subsidiary dedicated to managing operations at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport for a concession period of 30 years. South Africa's troubled power utility split is expected to be debated over the next month. Eskom is struggling to clear a $10.9 billion debt. As a result, experts have urged President Cyril Ramaphosa to divide it into 3 companies. Well, that idea has not received a warm welcome from trade unions in South Africa. Here's Angela Coppola in Johannesburg.
South African labour unions have been suspicious of government intentions around breaking up the utility or privatising it.
First of all, we reject that proposal with the contempt it deserves. We've been suspecting for the longest time as NUMSA that government's plan all along has been privatization. They've been speaking about it all of last year. We found the denials quite bizarre, to be frank, because it was very obvious that this was the course which they were going to take.
Others disagree, suggesting there's a solution that could work for all concerned.
You should have a transmission network like roads or like railways or like airline routes or whatever, on which different people transport electricity. We should separate the transmission so that we can have a proper way of charging and costing the purchase, generation, distribution, supply of electricity.
One think tank has been calling for the breakup of the utility for more than 2 decades.
The rest of the world now is energy markets, energy trading. Those that are still state-owned have been broken up into different means of production, distribution, and of course the grid transmission. And this is something that should have been done long, long ago.
Government is pursuing a range of strategies to make Eskom more efficient. It has the board looking at a turnaround strategy, and the president has appointed a task team to have oversight of that strategy.
If Eskom was run properly, with clean leadership, with a board that is not made up of the ANC cronies who have proven themselves to be corrupt for more than 2 decades, but if the boards of these SOEs actually made up of people like members of the community, right? You have also representation from unions and labor and business. Then that's when we'll get actual transparency about how decisions are made.
It will require engineers, not financiers and insurers and all sorts of other people running it. And if it is focused on engineering, solving the engineering problems, getting the maintenance going at the power stations, and it stops buying electricity from so-called renewable wind and solar for roughly 2 rand and selling it for less than 1 rand, that would be a start.
As we wait for those final proposals, everyone's wondering whether Eskom can in fact be saved. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The Kenyan government has launched the bus rapid transport system in efforts to fast-track movement of cargo and passengers across the metropolitan. With the congestion around the city, the government has offered an alternative that will seek to control the traffic flow around the city. The move has drawn mixed reactions amongst the residents of Nairobi. Penina Karibe has the story.
Every day, about 3 million vehicles drive into Nairobi's central business district. But with limited spaces to accommodate these vehicles, congestion has become the norm. To address this, the government has announced what it calls a workable solution. It has created 2 car-free days starting 1st of February, Wednesday and Saturday of each week. But this ambitious plan has received mixed reactions here in the streets.
I'm supporting it because for those people who are doing trading, they're actually going to grow the economy, probably make about 40 million in a day, which translates to maybe 40 billion in a year. So I think once in a while, let's leave our cars, come and do shopping and support the common mwananchi.
It is not a good thing because people like the motorcycle operators are small business people who are trying to make a living, so they should have allowed them into the central business district instead of pushing them out, which can see them resort into criminal activities.
On these 2 days, hawkers will be allowed into the CBD to sell their wares. In a move the government hopes will generate an annual income of $38 million.
I think there's a lot of misinformation. They have mentioned about 3 or 4 streets: Harambee Avenue, part of Moi Avenue, City Hall. I don't know where the other place is, which doesn't seem to be, to be a reason to lock vehicles outside. So there must be proper information given by the PS, as opposed to just give a blanket statement on CBD. CBD, we don't know where the boundaries are.
Organized car-free days are held in various cities across the world. For instance, It was introduced in Kigali, Rwanda in May 2016 and is held on the first Sunday of every month. This is the start for Kenya, and if successful, it will be a real milestone in sorting out the transport chaos in this bustling city. Penina Karibe, CGTN in Nairobi, Kenya.
The volume of private equity deals flowing into East Africa recovered in 2018, nearly doubling to $834.3 million. That's up from $446.8 million the year before. The cash has mostly gone to traditional private equity sectors, including education, manufacturing and technology. However, creative industries like film, music, fashion and e-sport are emerging as new investment destinations. Here in Kenya, Heva Enterprises has announced 3 funds targeting either seed stage capital or longer-term debt for medium-sized businesses. CGTN spoke to the fund's managing partner, George Gashara, about investing in creative industries in East Africa.
Right now, a lot of our clothes in the region are second-hand European hand-me-downs.
Pretty much.
We're importing over 100,000 metric tons every year, but we want to start to stimulate local production of fashion. And we have a lot of brands that are trying to offer specific products, whether they're high-value products or eco products and anything in between. We're starting to invest in manufacturing and retail. We already have prototyped with 3 factories, and going into 2022, we want to move close to 500 million shillings into that space. There's limited opportunity to scale to market, or the path to market, and so you find we have a sprawling ecosystem of, say, web developers, app developers that cannot integrate into the Google Play Store because Africa doesn't have merchant accounts, and so there's a whole lot of IP that goes to waste because there's no investment truck for that. And so if you think about gaming, a lot of games that are able to be sold in this ecosystem are sold through credit cards that are international credit cards, or people buy from Dubai. But then we still consume. If you look at consumption trends for like the Middle East, it includes Africa, because a lot of our business people go to China and the Middle East to buy products. And so the sales are magnified in the Middle East, and Africa is obscure. Look at the entire sum of revenues to the artists. A lot of them come from live music performance. And so as a fund, our music strategy, especially around investment, focuses on creating a high-quality East African music circuit. That's a live music circuit that allows audiences to pay tickets in advance, to spaces to host regular programs, and to also coordinate around the region so that one artist can be signed in one circuit and they can finish their year doing 5 to 10 major gigs, which would secure their annual income.
The European Union has approved a $349 million financial assistance package for Tunisia. The funding aims to boost employment and local development. The EU is also looking at creating opportunities for Tunisian youth. Adnan Chauchi has more.
Following a meeting between Tunisian Premier Youssef El-Shahed and European Neighbourhood Policy and Enlargement Negotiations Commissioner, the European Commission announced that the EU has adopted a financial assistance package worth about $348 million, which is the highest amount ever allocated to Tunisia under the European Neighbourhood Instrument.
We have committed ourselves to provide 300 million in grants per year till 2020, and of course we are in constant discussions about projects, etc. As we believe this money is needed, this money is necessary, and shall contribute to the further, in particular, economic and societal development of the country.
The EU official also noted that this record financing reflects the EU's commitment to create opportunities for the Tunisian youth, facilitate a more flourishing and attractive business environment, and build the capacities of local governments to improve the living conditions of local populations.
The European Union will continue to support Tunisia in an unprecedented manner, and of course we are looking to further reform efforts, but it's also important to address, so to say, the needs and to understand what is possible, what is necessary, and to have a very pragmatic approach in order to stabilize the good development we have seen in the past couple of years. And once again, every kind of support, because from a European perspective, we have any interest in having a stable, well-functioning neighborhood.
Tunisian authorities announced that the EU funding will be divided into several programs, many projects targeting the youth.
About $68 million will be dedicated for the Youth in Action program that aims to improve the economic, political and social inclusion of the most vulnerable Tunisian youth through improving their access to the labor market. About $17 million is earmarked to strengthening the structure of the Tunisian ecosystem in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship.
An 80 million support to local governance program aid will encourage Tunisia's efforts to boost local development and reduce regional and local disparities as part of its decentralization process. According to the EU, about $182 million have been allocated to various programs and actions supporting key economic sectors, such as the private sector, urban development, tourism and culture, as well as the modernization and reform of the Tunisian public administration. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. A school in Morocco offers young people from disadvantaged backgrounds culinary skills for free.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Tanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
As the traditional Chinese Spring Festival approaches, the Chinese Embassy in Botswana held a reception and gala in the capital, Gaborone. Botswana's Foreign Minister Vincent Seretse was part of the high-profile local and Chinese dignitaries who attended the event. In his speech, Chinese Ambassador to Botswana, Shao Yambo, said the just-ended year 2018 will be remembered as China's 40th anniversary since opening up to the world, an act that has seen many achievements: a stable GDP, promotion of high-quality development in Africa, and reforms that have seen growth in trade volumes between China and Africa as some of the milestones achieved. He also praised the cordial diplomatic and trade ties between China and Botswana. Cairo is an overpopulated megacity of more than 20 million people and is already struggling with monster traffic jams, widespread waste problems and pollution. But now packs of stray dogs are adding to the city's challenges. Dina Matego reports.
Attacks by dogs are becoming an increasing problem in Egypt. According to the Agriculture Ministry, 400,000 cases of dog bites were reported in 2017, up from 300,000 in 2014. 231 people have died over the past 4 years from the wounds they received, mainly as a result of rabies.
I'm talking about 60 or 70 dead cases caused by dogs in 1 year. Some people who are not experts go on media outlets and claim that dogs only transfer one disease, but in fact, dogs transmit many diseases.
Dog bite carrying the rabies virus is said to be fatal within 24 hours as it damages the human nervous system. There is no official data on the number of stray dogs, but activists say they are running loose in their millions, with some of the attacks occurring from the same dog. Animal rights advocates have sought to offer solutions, actively removing dogs from the streets and giving them homes. However, this has not been easy. There exist no specific measures taken to bring the stray dog population under control.
Most of the donations we get are not enough because we have many expenses, and also people here in Egypt do not believe in mercy for the dogs. We are just a group of people who go to the streets, rescue injured stray dogs and cure them. We have staff that needs to be paid. We provide so many solutions that cost nothing, but no one listens or cares.
In 2017, authorities killed more than 17,000 stray dogs following multiple complaints of dog disturbances in the south of Cairo. A $5 award was promised to those who capture and hand over at least 5 strays. Animal rights defenders have also accused the government of killing dogs using a chemical drug known as cintrizine, allegations which the government has denied. Dog sterilization programs providing rabies vaccination and removing the garbage are some of the solutions that have been suggested to control the stray dogs in the city. Dina Matengo, CGTN.
In Morocco, young people from the city of Saleh in the country's northwest have been offered free training at a cooking school. The project aims to provide youth from disadvantaged backgrounds with culinary skills so that they become employable and self-sufficient.
This is the Shamsi Culinary Arts School in Saleh. Around 50 young people will spend 2 years here learning how to cook up a storm. It's funded by the National Initiative for Human Development and various charities.
Thanks to the association, we could save the young people of Saleh. Currently, some of the young people don't feel like they have a future.
The first year covers the basics, and in their second year, students choose which cuisine to specialize in. One of the most popular is Moroccan cuisine, which includes pastry making.
When I had nothing to do and stayed home all the time, I had no idea about my future. But after my registration in the school to learn French pastry, I have dreams and goals to achieve now.
The apprentices have a great willingness to learn. I noticed a big improvement in their work from the beginning until now. They can cook and bake alone. We help so that they can work and start a career.
The school has helped keep many disadvantaged youths off the streets. After they graduate, the school also helps to place the new chefs in hotels and restaurants. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.